Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. As per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show, liked, commented, all that kind of stuff. I think I've caught up with everybody's comments now. Also a big thank you to those of you that emailed and said, oh, I'd really like a bottle of the Ardbeg, and Julie came and collected them. Big thank you to you guys, certainly to Jeff and Giles. As you well know, the show has no links to my employer. It's got absolutely nothing at all to do with them. It's obviously all mine, as they say these days. But of course, you can read between the lines. You as you say, they didn't take the girl out of Gauntley's, but you know what I mean. It's essentially, if something really intrigues me and really interests me, then chances are it's going to end up on the shelves in my employer. But obviously, that's not a given. But if you guys do sort of like see something on one of the episodes of the show and really like it, then always feel free to drop me an email. If I'm not stocking, I may well be able to point you in the direction of somebody that is. So yeah, good episode last week. Before we do continue, I do have an apology to make to Tom from Claxton's. Last week I incorrectly referred to him as the sales director. He's actually the company director, which is probably why he hasn't replied to my email last week. Either that or maybe he didn't like what I said, I don't know. Anyway, it's always the case. You send out samples, to be reviewed, and if you send me samples, you will get a fair review. I don't think I was unduly harsh to any of the samples that I had last week. I think I gave them all a fair crack at the whip, as they say. So not really a great deal to say today, apart from obviously, as you can see, we're now moving on to the Warehouse No1 series, which is what they're now calling their Cask Strength series. Love the bottles. Always have done, although they're a real pain on the shelf. They take up so much bloody room. Love the little tweaks they've done to the labelling to make them look more Art Deco-y. I mean, I know at the end of the day, bottles, labels, all the frippery is irrelevant. It's the juice in the bottle that counts, and we're going to have a look at said juice today. So without much further ado, let's have a look at today's lineup. Okay, so we're going to kick off with another grain to start off with. I always love to start off with a grain. So this is a 15-year-old Port Dundas, fresh bourbon barrel, C21021, distilled in March of 2006, bottled in 2021 at 58.1%. Bottling number 2 is another Orkney, again another Highland Park, a 9-year-old Highland Park, although on the label it obviously only says Orkney. It's a refill bourbon hoggy, number C22067, distilled in December of 2012 and bottled in 2023 at 61.2%, but is full. Oh, that kills me. Number 3 is a Linkwood, a 13-year-old Linkwood. This is a single STR Barrique, number C23096. It was distilled in April of 2010, bottled in 2023 at 54.6%. Now, when I kind of ask for samples from suppliers, I don't go nuts. I mean, a lot of them will have some very old stuff, and you're not going to get a sample, and there's chances are, even if it sort of blew my nuts off, I'm probably not going to stock it because it's too expensive. But in this instance, I thought, I want to have a sort of show the range that Claxtons are currently bottling. So I thought, what, I am going to ask for a couple of the older age statement bottlings that they have, even though they are slightly expensive. So the first of the 2 older age statement bottlings is a 26-year-old Ben Nevis. This is a single bourbon hoggy, C230H1, distilled in May of 1997 and bottled into 2023 at 47.1. The next bottling is a 27-year-old Arran. As you can see from colour, it's a little bit the colour of old olive oil. don't know whether that's a good thing or not. So this is a 27-year-old Arran. It's obviously a sherry butt, C23090. It was distilled in October of 1996 and bottled in 2023 at 50.4%. And finally, we're going to end with a bit of peat, because it's always good fun to end with a bit of peat. And this is a 14-year-old Port Charlotte, obviously distilled at Bruichladdich, a bourbon barrel, C23091, distilled in November of 2008 and bottled in 2023 at 53.2%. And not sure, I think this is the oldest Port Charlotte that I've come across. I know the distillery have just recently released an 18-year-old, which is their oldest age statement, and I think, from remembering what they were saying about it, I think it was about 20 years ago that they started production of Port Charlotte. So yes, I think this is the oldest independent bottling of Port Charlotte that I've come across. It might not be the oldest full stop, but certainly I think it's the oldest that I've come across, so really looking forward to finishing on that. So nothing else to say apart from let's kick off with a bit of Port Dundas. Right, okay, so 15-year-old Port Dundas. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Quite fresh, quite crisp, very grainy. It's got some nice fruit, some apricot, dried apricot and fresh apricot, a little bit of banana skin, and a lot of oak. As you would expect, fresh bourbon barrel. Not very coconutty, more vanilla, sort of dense vanilla. Although there is a lot of oak, I would say the balance is about right. I mean, I mean, it kicks off with the grain, and then the sort of like the oak starts to come through a little bit after that. It's a little on the young side for a grain. I mean, although it's 15, but as we well know, realistically you don't sort of bottle grains much before their 20s. But yeah, overall it's pleasant. It's not a bad nose at all. Let's see what the parts are. Fresh, nippy, zippy, quite citric, apricot, minerals, dried fruit. Oh, you can really taste that alcohol. That really is quite masking the finish and making one's mouth sort of watering uncontrollably. A little nutty, a little, not very complex, basically is what I'm trying to say. It's kind of like, yes, it starts off with the grain, and then suddenly in comes all of that alcohol, and that's pretty much it for any more flavour development. Let's put a little drop of water with it and see what that does, see if that just kind of opens things up a little bit. Oilier, oakier, more vanilla, more bourbon character. Less grain. There's a slight nip there, but it's got quite sweet now, quite sweet, quite vanilla, less complex, still pleasant, but yeah, it's kind of sort of dropping the alcohol off has kind of just brought forward the oak, and that really does seem to be pretty much the focal point of the nose now. Let's see what the parts are. The finish is quite pleasant. It's got a lovely spiciness on the finish, really pings in, but overall again it's kind of pretty much brought out the oak, and that's all you get on the palate. It's kind of oak and spirit. I'm not getting any of the graininess, I'm not getting any dried fruit, I'm not getting anything really apart from oak and a little bit of alcohol really. It's not bad, it's pleasant, but it's sort of like not floating my boat, as they say. Right, okay, so let's move on to the 9-year-old Orkney. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Bloody hell. Now, if I was tasting this blind, I would not be at Highland Park. I mean, it's fruity. It's almost estery. It's quite confected as well. It's beyond the bubblegumminess. I don't mind a little bit of bubblegummy, Viognier-y kind of white fruit and things like that, as long as, you know, but sometimes it's a fine line. And this is kind of like, ooh, just stepping over into sort of like confected territory, it has to be said. A little bit of pepper, plenty of vanilla, the sort of bourbony sweet vanilla, a little bit of salt, but not a great deal. And like I said, you know, I'm not in Highland Park territory at all. Again, here we're in sort of one of those kind of situations where it sort of plays into the sort of like the raison d'etre for distilleries selling off casks, because basically this does not say Highland Park at all. Yes, I suppose they could have vatted this in with, I mean, it's clean. I mean, for God's sake, there's no cardboard. You know, it's good spirit. I mean, surely they could have found a use for it. Maybe not. But yes, it doesn't really say Highland Park. Let's see what the palate's like. Ooh. Yeah, again, you can feel that alcohol. What's that, 60, 61? Yeah, 61.2%. Again, doesn't say Highland Park to me. The alcohol is suppressing the palate pretty much. It's got quite a lot of green fruit, astringent green fruit, almost space-idey green fruit, green apple, gooseberry. Again, touch of barley. There's a sweetness there, which I get the impression is going to suddenly come banging out once you kind of mitigate that alcohol, and it is verging on the confected. Little bit of salt maybe on the finish, but you know, it's kind of, I think putting a little drop of water with it is going to sort of really see where we're at with this particular spirit. It's made it a little bit more sweeter, a bit more bubblegummy, not so complex. I'm certainly not getting the sort of white fruit that's like floral notes. There's a little bit more salt, one could argue, but again, and possibly a little bit more barley, but I'm not really getting Highland Park. Not that that should be a huge issue, because it doesn't say Highland Park on the label, it just says Orkney. You know, but I'm not kind of loving it, if you see what I mean. I'm not getting it. Let's see what the palate's like. Again, that finish is a bit confected and a bit bitter as well. I mean, I don't mind a bit of bitterness. I like a bit of bitterness. It's a counterpoint, but it's a bit kind of, it's a little bit disjointed, and I don't think the spirit is old enough. And I suppose you kind of think, well, where's it going to go? Is the oak going to just keep going and going and going? You know. I suppose this is always the question when you sort of like, when you have a single cask, you sort of like, sometimes you kind of bottle it out of concern, I suppose. Personally, I think I might have left us a little bit longer just to see where we were going with it. If it didn't kind of quite work out, there's always the option for finishing, shoving it into something else. You know, there's all these things that you could do, but it's a little too young, and it's a little bit, although it's not spirity, it just doesn't really have the character. Again, certainly when you put a little drop of water with it, it becomes pretty much oak and spirit. And so, for me, I would have to pass on this. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Linkwood. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Ooh, yeah, that's Linkwood. Big, oily, waxy. Think Linkwood on steroids. I mean, you know, this is kind of amplified Linkwood. I mean, Oh, it's got lovely spiciness, delicate dried red fruits, a bit of red currant, hints of apricot, marzipan, a little bit of menthol, vanilla. Oh yeah, that's impressive. It's shown that Linkwood has the weight and the intensity to stand up to, well, it stands up to sherry cask, so it's going to stand up to an SDR barrique, isn't it? I mean, not a problem there. And it's just so beautifully balanced. I mean, this is, you know, I bang on and on and on about the balance, but this is, you know, this just displays everything you want. You've got the distillery character, you've got the cask character, and it's all lovely and harmonious. And yeah. After two, shall we say, slightly disappointing bottlings, this really has kind of, set the bar. That's a lovely nose. Really, really like that. Let's see what that's like. That's a lovely palate. It's kind of vacillating, if you like. Starts off with the sort of rich, oily, juicy fruit, milky vanilla. In comes the spice, the red fruits, a little bit of tannin as it grips on the middle, but then the fruit kind of comes back again, and the marzipan, the vanilla, the milky vanilla, and then right on the finish, it's kind of the tannins just kind of come through a little bit. You know, after they grip on the mid palate, they kind of soften, they sort of come back again. Bit chocolatey, still a little bit of lingering wininess. I mean, that is just a gorgeous palate. It's beautifully complex. It's not one of those kind of like linear palates where, you know, you start on one point, then you get, for example, the spirit character, then you get the oak, and then maybe it returns to spirit. This is just kind of like coming in waves. I'm getting sort of waves of STR cask, waves of distillery character, of spirit character, also getting vanillins from the cask as well. I mean, overall, that's just an absolutely gorgeous whiskey, it has to be said. And it's 54.6, and it really doesn't need any water at all. For me personally, I think it's got that intensity, which is really, really nice. But I will put a little drop of water just to see what happens. Okay, so we've lessened the STR cask, lessened the wininess, lessened the dried fruits, the red fruits, and we've now got more barley, more weighty, oily sort of apricot. Oh, but it's so juicy still, and it's got that little sort of gingery spice note just in the background. That's lovely. I mean, with or without water, that is a lovely nose. Let's see what it smells like. Gorgeous, silky, juicy, less tannic, less grippy, but again really harmonious. Distillery character, STR character, beautiful length, lovely balance, really harmonious. And like I said, without the water, you just get, it just lessens the grippiness and the tannic notes. Either way, I think that's a gorgeous whiskey. You know, personally, I love it neat because I just love that sort of intensity of character, but you know, either way, I'd be more than happy to drink that with a little drop of water as well, just to soften things up. So it's a sort of just a bloody good whiskey at the end of the day. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Ben Nevis. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Oh, that's lovely. I mean, that is gorgeous. Beautiful, mature, dusty, sawdusty American oak. Doesn't quite have the breadiness that I would ordinarily expect from a Ben Nevis. We're more almost spey-like, with green fruit, green apple, gooseberry, vanilla, a little bit of white chocolate, touch of sweet tangerine. apricot, honeysuckle, lovely dusty American oak, like I said. Yeah, like I said, this feels more like a mature Spey than it does a Highland, and certainly I'm not getting any of the usual bready, sort of doughy, malty kind of Ben Nevis character. It's got a freshness which is quite amazing at 26, sorry. Was I? I can't remember being fresh at 26, but there you go. That was a long time ago, when I was 26 anyway. A little bit of wood spice coming in now, a little bit of ginger, cinnamon, tea leaf. That's good. Now I think we're in about sort of, what are we? 200, I forget, I can't remember what the hell I've priced this at. There you go, it's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it? But it's bloody good. It's expensive, but my god, it's good. I think it's about, is it 290 odd, I think? Let's see what that's like. Oh my god, that's good. It's got that lovely freshness again, juicy, citric. Again, not very much of that breadiness I would expect, but just vibrancy. It's just so wonderfully vibrant and fresh and citric. A little bit of green fruit again, gooseberry, green apple, delicate sawdusty American oak, juicy, maybe a little bit more Highlandy now on the palate. I would guess it's got that sort of almost kind of granity, minerally, kind of mingling freshness with the citrus notes as well. All I can say is that's stunning, absolutely stunning, and you know, great cask. Although, like I said, it doesn't quite sort of have the usual breadiness of Ben Nevis, it has to be said. If you just think of it as just a whiskey, it's just damn good. Right, okay, so let's move on to the 27-year-old Arran. Let's see what the notes gives us on this end, shall we? Now, I think I think that Claxton said this was possibly one of the oldest expressions of Arran that had been bottled. I honestly couldn't say, but I'm trying to remember when Arran was it 98 Arran first started production. Anyway, but let's see what those are on this end. Sherry, herbal, oloroso, chocolate, dried fruit, raisinated fruit. Don't get a great deal of maturity. It's almost kind of in stasis, it has to be said. All right, there's a mellowness, there's a roundedness to the. Is that a real word? Roundedness. It has a softness. I don't get a great deal of salt. I don't get a great deal of coastal character. I suspect that this spent probably more years on the mainland than it had on Arran. Yeah, it's sherried. It's old. It's. Yeah, it's just kind of not really floating my boat, it has to be said. I'm not really getting any Arran character, I'm not getting any spirit character really, to be bluntly honest with you, and it hasn't sort of developed that sort of oxidised kind of old sherry character. Like I said, it doesn't smell like it's 27 years old at all. See what that's on. Soft, juicy, raisinated fruits, a little bit austere on the mid palate, bit of salt on the finish, some charred wood. I can see why this was kind of bottled, because the although it doesn't have the mature oxidised kind of sherry character that I would expect from a sherry cask of this age, it is quite austere on the mid palate, and I can feel the fact that this is just, that austerity is going to kind of carry on. I think the sort of like the rest of the palate is probably going to fall away, and this was kind of really just bottled when it should have been bottled. But you know, it's got a bit of citrus, a bit of chocolate on the finish, but it's just not complex enough. It's not harmonious. I don't get any distillery character. I don't get any real complexity other than the wood, and it's not giving me old sherry character at the end of the day. So I don't find this really interesting whatsoever, and it's expensive, you know, and it is what it is at the end of the day. And that's the thing with single casks, you know, they sometimes they just do their own thing, and they just don't sort of conform, shall we say, and this one certainly hasn't. Right, okay, so on to the final whiskey of the afternoon. Not really afternoon, it has to be said, but anyway, we'll press on. Let's see what the nose gives us on this. Oh, I love that. Fresh, astringent, herbal peat, but it's got a beautiful fruitiness beneath it, a juiciness. There's peach, there's white peach, pear, sorry, apple, barley, apricot, lovely richness of spirit, but a lovely intensity of peat as well. Plenty of salt, plenty of bog myrtle. It's almost kind of encrusting my nose with salt. I mean, stunning, absolutely stunning. I mean, yeah. As you know, I have a soft spot for Bruichladdich. I love Port Charlotte. I love Optimal. But you know, it's got to be spot on, and this absolutely is. I mean, you know, this is 14 years old, and I can imagine this cask would have carried on for another 14 years without a problem. And I mean, that would be intriguing. Oh, what the hell would a 30-year-old Port Charlotte be like? Well, it'd be out of if the distillery bottled it, would be silly thousands of pounds, wouldn't it? I mean, how much do they want for the bloody 30-year-old Bruichladdich they just punted out recently? I mean, you know, I depress. It certainly sort of depresses the hell out of me, considering what 30-year-old whiskies were hitting the shelves at, you know, 5 or 10 years ago. It's just ridiculous. It's obscene, to be honest with you. Yes, I can understand distilleries need to make their money. I know that. We're all in business. We all need to make money. But sometimes you just have to think, is this just going too far? But anyway, I'm not really into the politics of whiskey, or politics full stop. What I'm interested in is a good whiskey, and you know what? I like this. This is stunning. I mean, again, it's not cheap. I mean, Port Charlotte isn't. I mean, it's probably overpriced. But you know what? I'd happily sell this. I'd happily say buy this, because it's just bloody good. Anyway, let's see what Pal's like. You know what I love about peated Bruichladdich is that you can taste the Bruichladdich character. I get the barley, the apricot, the honeysuckle, touch of banana skin, juicy fruit, apricot, astringent coastal peat, a little bit of bog myrtle, seaweed, dark chocolate, dark peat, tannins but not too tannic, lovely salty mentholated finish. I mean, oh, I just love that intensity. I mean, it doesn't need any water at all. I'm going to put a little drop of water just to see what happens to it, but oh my god, that's incredible. I mean, yes, I know. You know, Port Charlotte, Optimal on the label, big bucks, you're going to make your money. But let's put it this way, it's going to take a lot to cock up a Port Charlotte, like it takes a lot to cock up a Kalila, but it has been known to happen, it has to be said. No change to the nose whatsoever. Still beautifully fruity, sort of beautifully Bruichladdich, lots of astringent coastal herbal peat. Oh, I love that. That's a real wakey nose. A little bit softer maybe, I will give you that, but but you know, without any water, that's just intense and stunning. Let's see what the Pal's like. brought forward the oiliness, the sweetness of the barley, the sort of like the peat and the herbal notes are kind of pushed back a bit, but you can still taste it. It's still got plenty of peat and herbal peat character, bog myrtle, salt. It's just longer. Oh, just a combination of sort of peat and spirit is just absolutely sublime. You know, it is just stunning. I mean, I love Port Charlotte. I love Bruichladdich. I'm not blind. Not everything that they do is absolutely wonderful. You know, but you know, that's stunning. Okay, so that's on today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to Tom at Claxton's for the samples for today's episode of the show. Like I said, without the kindness of independent bottling companies, distilleries and so on and so forth, reps and that, you know, there wouldn't be a show. So a very, very big thank you. The Port Dundas, yeah, it was all right. It was okay, and you know, I suppose if you'd have, I don't know what that retails for, and you know, I don't like bang on about cost or cost prices or selling prices and stuff like that. I'd much rather sort of talk about the quality of the spirit, but you know, they do unfortunately go kind of hand in hand, and you know, it's not bad spirit. A bit overly oaked, and the trouble is you stick a little bit of water with it and it just becomes a little bit homogeneous, a bit kind of like, you know, overly oaked and just not really that interesting. And to a certain extent you could say the same about the Orkney or the Highland Park. It was a little bit young. It was very, very un-Highland Park. It was like, my God, this is fruity, you know, and you kind of like think, well, why the hell haven't Highland Park used it, you know, to basically sort of balance up some of the cardboardy crap that they make. Did I just say that? Anyway, yeah, kind of not really floating my boat. On the other hand, the Linkwood just said everything that I wanted about a whiskey. Beautifully balanced. Character of the spirit, character of the cask. You know, what more can you ask for? And you can say exactly the same about the Ben Nevis. The Ben Nevis was just stunning. All right, okay, you can argue that maybe not quite so much typicity of distillery character, but a beautiful spirit nevertheless. Plenty of, well, sometimes space, sometimes Highland character, lovely maturity, got that lovely sawdusty character. It tasted like a mature whiskey, which is what I want, and unfortunately the Arran didn't. You know, it's just a simplistic thing. It didn't taste like a 27-year-old sherry matured whiskey. In actual fact, it tasted like it was somewhere in stasis in and around its kind of teens, and there just wasn't the interest that there was in the Ben Nevis. But you know, I mean, it was a good spirit. But it was just, I don't know what it would have to hit the shelves at, but probably somewhere close to the price of the Ben Nevis, and I'd quite happily sell the Ben Nevis at that price because it is a stunning whiskey. The Arran isn't quite so stunning. The Port Charlotte, on the other hand, is stunning. Brilliant, bloody lovely whiskey. Expensive for a 14, yes, I know that, but it's Port Charlotte, and it's complex. And you know, it takes water really nicely. It's got that lovely sort of, it's beautifully balanced at the end of the day, which again is something that I always look for in a whiskey. So and that had it in spades. So anyway, that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I know what I'll be doing next week. It's one of those sort of months where I seem to have kind of at least 3 or 4 episodes of the show kind of stacked up, ready to go, as they say. It's almost like having a sort of, you know, a machine gun magazine full. That's the most crap analogy, I guess. But anyway, so yes, next week's episode of the show I think is going to be really intriguing. Well, they all are at the end of the day, aren't they? But anyway, that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope you've enjoyed it. Like I said, you know, if any of these bottlings do kind of grab your attention, you kind of like can figure out which ones are on the shelves in a certain employer establishment. So anyway, until next week, all I have to say is good afternoon and good dramming.
Én értem miért fél Félsz most már, talán meglátod, egyedül maradtál. Ne harcolj, nincs éppen